Good evening. Welcome to the workshop session of the Mayor and City Council of the City of College Park. I'm Mayor Bianca Motley Broom. We have a full quorum present with council members McKenzie, Karn, Arnold, and Gay. We are participating virtually due to the state of emergency in regard to the inclement weather this evening. But we will get started here at 6:06 p.m. With a special event permit discussion for an event on May 10th.
Mr. Huff, you are allowed to speak. Please unmute for me if you're not already.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Dominic Huff. You all definitely know me as the editor-in-chief of South 7585 News, formerly Homeroom News. We're seeking to have an event, Experience Tri-Cities. It will be a community festival, which will have vendors, we'll have community resources, a health fair. We will also have live entertainment. Using the stage will be local entertainment acts. And we're also trying to celebrate the 35th anniversary of our schools. As you all may or may not be aware of, that this is the 35th anniversary of the Fulton County School Consolidation Plan when we created Westlake, Tri-Cities, Creekside, Banneker, when those schools all merged together. So this is kind of like a homecoming event. We're anticipating about 800 to 1,000 people showing up. It will be a free admission. We will focus on the small vendors. We'll focus on our nonprofits, community resources, have some entertainment out there. We're trying to get the bands. I don't want to promise that yet. And it'll just be a great day with some competitions to help promote the Tri-Cities area and College Park as a whole. And my previous experience of doing events, I do the Taste of Southwest Atlanta with my nonprofit at Rainbow Mall. We have done that off and on for 4 years. We had stopped due to the pandemic. We previously did events out in Mableton with the South Cobb Springs Community Affair. And we also held the Union Station Mall, formerly Chandler Mall, 30th anniversary 8-day event back in 2010 in Union City. So I'll stop and take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Huff. We'll start with Councilmember McKenzie.
And that's Mayor Pro Tem McKenzie. Mr. Huff, thank you again for coming today. And also I want to thank you for putting in your permit with plenty of time. So this is wonderful. Looking forward to the event. I don't have any questions, but I do want to let James Hammond know that the city attorney is sitting in the attendee and he needs to come into the panelist room.
Councilmember Karn.
Thank you. All right. Sounds like a great event. Is Michelle Johnson on?
Yes, sir, I'm on.
All right. Now, I know several months ago we talked about adjusting the fines, fees for usage of the park when it comes to larger events. For example, 500 people, where we had a nominal fee because the parks weren't used to that kind of a capacity. I think we had a workshop on it, and I think there was a consensus that obviously we needed to readjust those fees because the parks weren't designed for that volume of folks. Now, they may have the capacity, but we did talk about adjusting fees. Do you recall that?
So this is a special permit. There's not a fee for that. It's just a special permit. So I would defer to the clerk's office on the charges for the, I think you're referring to the pavilions for the
well,
space.
We talked about the parks as a whole. We had several events, if you recall. Were you at that meeting that we discussed it? We talked about events that we had that were in the hundreds, and they paid the nominal fee, and it kind of overloaded things a bit where we were maybe a little unprepared for that kind of volume for a planned event. But at the same time, we did not have a tier to accommodate events at the parks in the hundreds or more. And we talked along the lines of a tier in terms of a fee for those larger events at the park. I don't think we went any further with that, but I thought at some point it was going to come back to us that we looked at a fee because there were some complaints about a couple of events at the park that were a little bit larger than expected. And we didn't know what we were going to be expecting, but we did not have a tier for larger events at the park. And I may not, I'm sure I'm not the only one that recalls that discussion that we had in workshop.
Councilman Carn, can I interject? This is Queenie.
Ms. Brown, go right ahead.
So that conversation did happen. I was doing research to determine a fee. Based on tiers across the South Metro area, like the other cities, it just hasn't been brought back to council, to mayor and council as of yet. Like I said, the clerk office has been busy. We haven't had a full staff till now. So I haven't been able to like fully been able to flesh it out and present it to you in full without, giving you bits and pieces.
Well, at the end of that workshop session, we did say bring us back some numbers to accommodate these large events. So we still need to look at some larger numbers for these type of events here. I'm not against the event. It sounds like it's going to be a good, positive event. City manager?
Yes, sir.
What I'd like to do, and I'm glad this is on workshop since it's a discussion, and Mr. Huff, who I know well, first of all, I want to make it clear that I'm for the positive, good events in this community. But we do not have a tier to accommodate our overhead for something like this. So this is why we instructed city clerk to come back with a tier for us so that we could accommodate these kind of events, because we don't want to be underprepared and understaffed. The larger events, they do cost the city a little bit more money. So city manager, I want us to come back with a tier to accommodate this size event. We welcome events of all sizes. We are a hospitality city, but we want to make sure we come back with a tier that's appropriate, that covers our overhead, security, and other concerns that we got for larger events that then normally happen at the parks, like we discussed earlier. So
Yes,
that's all I got. But again, I'm for this event. Let's get a tier that's appropriate so we can have an appropriate fee attached to this thing.
Councilmember Arnold?
Thank you, Mr. Huff, for being proactive. I think that a lot of times when we hear about these events, it's usually a couple of weeks out, maybe even a good month. So thank you for being proactive in your planning, and looking forward to hearing more and how this event will come to fruition. Thank you again.
Councilmember Gay?
Oh, hey, Mr. Huff, good evening. The only concerns I have is I'm for the event as well, but the only two large events we have, and I think Dominique Huff is referring to the 18 acres. I don't think he's referring to Phillips Park. And that being said, the only two approved events is the Coming Home College Park, which I'm trying to convince them to take that back over to Lolly Miller Boulevard, and then the citywide festival. With the citywide festival, it takes a good bit of resources to keep that safe and fun. And so, to Council Members Cohen's point, we did host a event of Africans who was here, but I noticed that they had a company that came out and cleaned up behind them. But the only thing I would like to bring back is the cost associated with police, that we have appropriate fire and EMS, because these really large events, they do take resources from the city, and we have to prepare appropriate for them. And also, question: how are you planning on paying for it? Not us, but how are you going to sponsor the event? Are you getting sponsors or donations?
That's a good question, Councilman Corn. Like, we will be getting sponsors and donations. So we are fully prepared. Like when I deal with Greenbrier and we dealt with Union City and Cobb County, uh, I pay the porta potties, hiring police. In this case, would be the College Park Police Department. Um, EMS in the past, I know we didn't have EMS, but I don't know what the city's ordinance is. EMS was a 911 call because it was the size of the event that we had. Um, but we are fully prepared to pay costs for the event. So I mean, just let us know what we have to pay for that, so we can get that together to you all from the city. So we're used to that. I've dealt with that with City of Atlanta, where there's got to go through so many departments to check off and everything. So and I'm used to also working with the Fulton County Health Department, which this will be in the Fulton County side. And like you said, like our vision for this was to use the old Jamestown Shopping Center. Well, I'm not sure if that's the park or what have you. So I do apologize in advance for any confusion to this body. But that's what we was looking at possibly having on that field, that way that the cars are parked in that lot to where we're not intruding on any neighborhood. And also, too, you did mention cleanup. I know at Greenbrier Mall, we had to pay them for a fee to clean up. We can hire a crew. Just let us know what the city expects, and we want to be a good partner. I have two business here over there at Club E, so we definitely are part of the community. We want to do something to have a great relationship with the city, and also to make this an ongoing event here in the South Side.
Dominique, what I want
Yeah.
to know is if you gonna raise money for this event before. I would like for you to get. I wouldn't mind if if you could come back with a little bit more information, like the cost of the event, and we provide you with some more better understanding, because fields aren't free. That's why
Right.
Jamestown is attractive, because most cities you can't have events there now. They're super expensive. Even the Home Depot backyard, even though we nowhere close to that in terms of amenity, but size wise, I mean, they pay $50,000 for the Seersucker event. So we do want to attract. This me talking. We do want to attract people to our community, but I don't. I think we have to be positive about start talking about what that costs, and make it a win-win for everybody. Because when I have events, I'm inviting my community, so they're first and foremost. When I start bringing people into our community, they want to expect to be inclusive as well. So we need to kind of talk about that.
I'm willing to have that conversation. I mean, I know sites are not free. That's why I wanted to have this conversation now. And I do thank the council and the mayor for allowing for starting early, because I know stuff does cost. And I'm not a big company, and I do have a track record of raising money. So we can follow back up when I come back before you all or talk to you individually, but where we'll show you, hey, this is what we have the sponsors, but I at least want to get this started, because I know when it comes to attracting sponsors, they want to see that we at least have a location, because I can't sell an event without a location. I don't want to say, hey, we're going to do this in College Park. They call College Park to keep me honest, and College Park don't know nothing about this. So I just want to make sure things were done in order, so that way I can do what my sponsors and vendors need, and I can do what you all need to do as well. Because as we had to pay at Greenbrier Mall, we had the events over there. They charge us as well too. So I get that there's no such thing as a free lot, or whatnot. So I'm willing to come back in the month to show you what we have done. We can lay out some prices, lay out our numbers, show you where we're at, and we can come up with a win-win. I'm all for it.
Councilmember, are you good?
I'm done, man.
All right. Councilmember Carn?
Yeah, I was trying to use this hand thing here.
Yes, I saw it. I saw it. Yes.
So Mr. Huff, again, I think this is a positive event. I'm for it. Couple of questions. Let's see, Michelle, are you still there? And Queenie?
Ms. Johnson, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. First question, who handles this College Park special events form?
City clerk office.
I'm sorry.
City clerk office.
Clerk's office.
Okay, Queenie. Okay. First thing, I guess, Mr. Huff, you want to probably look at modifying your special event form because it has location of the event as Charles Phillips Park, not the Jamestown site. So you wanna probably look at that because the location here in our packet and the information that we have puts you at the park, which is a little smaller, significantly smaller than the Jamestown site. Uh, I look at this and where it says you're going to be hiring College Park police officers and have a cleanup crew. In addition to you hiring those, and I guess Michelle, this is at the park, so I guess you'll be looking at handling this for the most part. I can't hear you.
Our audio's not working.
Ms. Johnson, could you try responding in the chat? I'll read what you say.
Is her mute on perhaps, or
It is not.
I could hear her a minute ago.
Yeah, I
just
think
fine.
something cut out.
Okay, well, if you're handling this, we want to make sure that they cover for police, cleanup, obviously public works, grounds, or whatever have you, an EMS person on site, as well as additional porta potties, because obviously they're going to overload our small restroom facilities there if they're coming in with the numbers that they have on this form. Other than that,
Councilmember, Ms. Johnson
I
has
think
responded.
other than that, if you can still hear me, I think we're all set. So let's get a little more information. Also, Winston, now that you're on here, I guess you're on here as well. I do want a bit more robust indemnification process. I've seen cities that now have two forms in terms of indemnifying the city for these type of events, and they're two different types. And Winston, I want to talk to you about that offline. In 2025, it's a very litigious atmosphere, and we want some extra coverage, or should I say double coverage, when we have these kind of events. Because at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, they're looking for the deepest pockets in town. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the city of College Park. So we want to make sure we got some double coverage with some of these events. And we want to look at, well, I know we have a standard boilerplate, but I want to make sure, I want a second tier of coverage in terms of outfits that come in and work, going to have an event on our premises. So that's all I had on that.
Councilmember Ms. Johnson responded. She said the special events go through the city clerk's office. Recreation does not handle the special permits, and needs for police are scheduled through the College Park Police.
Okay, so the police and the clerk's office is handling this event for College Park. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. So once an applicant is approved, I send them the contact information to hire the recommended police officers based on what we feel the volume will be. Then of course they will have the contact sanitation for trash, and then of course recreation department to make sure that the attendees, well, I think that's Parks and Grounds, to make sure the bathroom attendants are paid for.
Okay, I'm just saying who's over this on site during the event, May 10th. Is it going to be police in the clerk's office, or is it going to be Parks and Rec, or is it going to be just a combination of everyone?
So my office is never on site for special events permit. Okay. It's usually just supporting staff, like the hired police officers, the other city employees.
All right. Well, city manager, you kind of follow the things we want to add and make sure that those are covered, the things that I mentioned. And yeah, I'm all for it, but let's make sure we're covered for the crowd as well as for any eventualities.
Okay, sir. No problem.
All right. Thank you.
Next, we've got a presentation on the Medical Angels of Mercy from Jewel Johnson. Ms. Johnson, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity of being here to speak with you all today. I certainly have been working very hard to try and address a lot of the issues that's plaguing us on the South Side. And I'll just give you a little short summation about Jewel Johnson, just in case some of you may know me and you may not. First of all, I'm a long-term resident of Fulton County, and I've lived in Atlanta, and I now reside in the city of South Fulton. I am married for over 40 years to the same man. I have three adult children, and I'm a retired nurse of 44 long years. And I wanted to do this because I actually got caught up in the problems that we were having on the South Side to the point that I had to have surgery. And there was so much going on between Wellstar and Emory, and my PC was a Wellstar uh, doctor, and my surgeon was an Emory doctor. So after they went through their sabbatical and going to court and all of this, the courts ruled in favor of Wellstar, and it was time for me to see my surgeon after they found out that I needed surgery. So my PC was trying to refer me back to my surgeon, and Emory just refused to take me, and they refused to take any other patients from Wellstar that lived on the South Side. So I was just stressed with trying to take good care of myself, and found a group of doctors in Roswell that would take me, and we went back and forth with trying to use North Side, and I kept getting bumped because this was right after the pandemic, and it came down to the point that I had to make a choice. And they gave me three choices of hospitals to have my surgery that I had to have. And I chose Emory Johns Creek because it was the closest one, and that's 60 miles from my house one way and 60 miles from the hospital one way. So you're talking about 120 miles a day for my husband and children to come and see about me while I was in the hospital. And I was actually in surgery 8 hours. I had a horrible experience, not from the doctors, but more or less from the poor care that I received in the hospital. And I think a lot of it had to do with all the craziness that was going on with healthcare. So after talking to some of the doctors that I was dealing with, one of the doctors asked me, well, Miss Johnson, what did you do you before you retired? Because I'm retired. I retired in 2013, and I just told him, I said, look, I've been working as a nurse. I'm retired now. I've been a nurse ever since I was 20 years old. I have 44 years working as a nurse. So he looked at me and said, I just want to thank you for your service. And when he said that, a light bulb went off in my head, and my inner spirit say something needs to happen about what's happening with our healthcare on the South Side. So my inner spirit said, you do it. As an advocate, that was a big thing for me to tackle. But I am so passionate about this that I've worked very hard to try and disseminate as much information that I possibly could. And I've been talking to many, many people, and I have gotten a lot of good feedback. There's a lot of people that are just like you guys. We're talking about it, and we have some that's already agreed with this. So, and I'm a member of Zion Hill Baptist Church. I don't know if you are familiar with it or not, but we are a huge in our church of nothing but doctors and nurses and other ancillary staff, medical staff that's there. And my church has agreed to partner with Talkback Georgia and Women of Change. Talkback Georgia is a community show that I started over a year ago, right after the pandemic. And Women of Change is a nonprofit that I started to help disadvantaged women and children. The last big thing I did with Women of Choice was I did a gala to honor all the people that are what we considered the worker bees of cities and counties and states where no one ever honor these people. And they're the people that actually make cities, counties, states. And it was very well attended. A lot of the people that was there came to me, and a lot of them had tears in their eyes, and they said, as long as I have worked in the community, no one has ever honored the work that I've done. So I said, well, that's the reason Women of Change is doing this. I know what you've done. I've been a part of it. Everything that you see from 285 on Cascade Road all the way to Fulton Industrial. My neighbors and I did that because we knew exactly what was going to happen if we didn't get out in front of it. So I wanted to talk to you all about partnering with Talkback Georgia and Women of Change, because I would like very much for this to use your venue. And I'm not asking for it to be free by no means, but I am looking at the fact that we have so many things going on. And one of the things I want to share with you all that a lot of the counties in the region is feeling the blunt of our people coming to their counties for services because we're not getting it on the south side. We've had people to go as far as Macon for service. So that is alarming to me, and we've had people to die on the south side, and I'm still very, very much concerned about that. And I know that you guys have people just like all the other cities. We have about 6 cities on this side, and I've been talking to most of them, and all of them are more or less very, very concerned, just like I am and you are. And one of the reasons why I say we pull people together in a gala, because number one, when you have something of this magnitude going on, you want to pull people together, especially your stakeholders. I'm going to tell you a little story prior to moving on with that. But one of the things that happened with me, I worked for the state of Georgia under human resource, and this was in the late 70s, early 80s. We had a crisis with our mental health patients, and the staff, some of the staff and myself, we came together every day to work on this problem because we've had nurses that was hit in the head with baseball bats, the doctors that got their arm broken. And we decided that we have to do something. Otherwise, somebody is going to really get killed behind this. So in working together on our lunch hours every day, we came up with the aggressive client training, and we filtered it out over the cottages. It started working. And when the superintendent got a hold of what was going on, he called us in and wanted to know, how all of this evolved. We shared all that, and he called in the human resource department, and we had to demonstrate everything to them. They loved it, and they implemented the aggressive client training. And to the best of my knowledge, it's still being implemented all over the state of Georgia if you become an employee under human resources. And the only thing we got, because we know back then, Georgia, and even now, Georgia was very racist. The only thing that I got was an accommodation, which I can actually show you that, from the superintendent for the hard work that I put in to make all this stuff happen. And that's one of the reasons why I know that we can make a change with what's happening with our healthcare. First of all, we have been so comfortable with our healthcare that we have allowed big business to take it over. And that's a no-no. There are some things that I would also like to share as it relates to that as we move on. And the next thing is that we have allowed our healthcare to be politicized to the point that they are threatening to send our doctors and nurses to jail for doing the job that they went to school to do. And it's very alarming. We're losing so many doctors and nurses and ancillary staff. We lost a lot during COVID, and a lot of them are still, even today, based on what's happening, they're leaving the field and going into other careers. And there isn't a whole lot that's really interesting a lot of our younger people and moving them toward our healthcare. One of the things we have to be very cognizant of, and that is AI. Mind you, AI has a place, but it should never take the place of the human care from our doctors and our nurses and respiratory therapy people, all the ancillary people that actually make this system that we've had for decades to help us. So I'm reaching out everywhere and I'm asking people to please join me, Talkback Georgia and Women of Change. And that's one of the reasons I am here today. I have put together a PowerPoint presentation for you. I have sent emails expressing the concern that I have and the things that we can do. And I'm hoping that you all have had an opportunity to read some of the emails. And I sent a lot of things to your city manager, letting him know what it is that all this is about. And one of the most exciting ways of getting in front of this is that we come together, all stakeholders, and work together and fix this problem. So that's one of the main things that I want to do. And at this point, if you don't mind, I'll start the PowerPoint presentation.
You just
Ms. Johnson, I want to make sure that we have adequate time for questions. So
okay.
Just
would you like to just run through it real quick and then
yes,
we can do the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. On your first video, I won't talk that much about it. I'm mainly supporting our healthcare workers and system, and as you can see, inspiring tributes and expanding the network and bringing everyone together. Next slide, please. Okay, this is real short, and I gave you a little synopsis about me, and you can also read it. It's a long history of me working in the community. I have a congressional honor from John Lewis. So you can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. I'm citing here about our problems. Our solutions. I'm sorry. Well, go back to the problems and then the solutions. Okay. Problems is no hospitals south of I-20. There's a shortage of healthcare workers. We have a healthcare desert. The insurance cost is speeding, astronomically, like everything else in our system. And we have quality of life issues. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, our solutions. To me, our solutions, and this is my vision. I'm a visionary. Didn't find out till I'm an old lady. Is regional collaboration. And I've been working on that individually with my team. Mr. Huff is my communication member of Women of Change that do a lot of communication for us. And the next thing is sharing information. Being able to share information is critical. That's one of the reasons why where we are now, we are not talking to each other. Cost savings. Being able to render some savings in the costs. And as we move on, we can even talk about that. The next thing is easy to use. Keeping the topics alive and creating dialogue and going until solutions are reached and implemented. We cannot afford to have our solutions sitting on a shelf. Next slide, please. What are we doing? Number one, a signature gala. and it explains exactly why, Gayla, just like I did before. The next thing is South Fulton Healthcare Summit, which we can do those summits in different areas of South Fulton, and it'll be very explanatory as we move on. Then the next thing is advocacy among commissioners. It is very, very important that we do this because, as I said before, that's a problem in that there's very little communication. We need to communicate. The next thing is media coverage. Media coverage is very, very important to be able to respond to the public as to why we are who we are and what we're doing about it. Next slide, please. Okay. Where do you fit in? You fit in with sponsorship and partnership. I'm asking College Park to please partnership with Talk Back Georgia and Women of Change, along with Zion Hill, who is another big sponsor of ours. I'm asking all the other people to please come on and sponsor with us as well. Okay, next slide, please. The health community had our backs. We need to have theirs now. We need to be able to do that. And there's so many ways we can do it, and letting them know that we really appreciate their work that they've done for decades. Next slide. The sponsorship, as you can see, there's the presenting sponsor and what that could be in cost, the supporting sponsor and what that could be, and participating sponsor. And what I say to a lot of people who are sponsoring, you don't have to look at it being totally you, because I'm asking all of my sponsors to ask their vendors to join them along with Talk Back Georgia and Women of Change to sponsor. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and I just talked about the vendor situation, discounts on facilities, legislation and solution. I would like to say two little things about legislation and solution. I truly believe that it's been put into my heart to ask people to, well, I should say the counties and cities, to put in their legislative packet that we ask the state of Georgia to go back and visualize their criteria for these large companies that do healthcare, to look at having at least one person from the state and one person from the county to serve on their board, not to tell them how to run their company, to be there as an advisor, because the sole responsibility of the state of Georgia is to make sure that all citizens in the state of Georgia have good health care. And the other and final thing that I'm asking that they create legislation to say that we're not supporting our healthcare to be politicized to the point that we're sending our doctors and nurses and ancillary staff to jail for doing the job that they went to school for. Next slide, please. This is just to give you some kind of idea about what we were talking about, the inaugural gala, fall 25 or fall 26. I think it's one more slide that really just shows you the different things. Okay. A celebration of how, I can't read my own thing. Healthcare. Well, it would help if I put my glasses on. Morning medical heroes. Who's who in one room, recognizing the need to advocate for healthcare. Next slide, please. Okay. And as you can see here, it's just my name and phone number, email address, and website. And I just want to thank you all, so we can open up for Q&A.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, I see your hand.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I apologize.
Okay, all right. Questions? And council members, it may just be easier for you to raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you.
Well, I had one
Councilmember
question.
Carr, go right ahead.
Jewel, thank you for the presentation. I know we spoke about this before a couple of months ago.
Yes, we did. And thank you for allowing me to be walked in to do this.
Councilmember, you're on mute.
Hey, Michelle, what's up?
Sorry about that. Okay.
Okay.
One thing I did hear that you
I'm
weren't
sorry,
asking for.
Councilmember. Hold on,
All right.
hold on one moment. Mr. Hammond, you are not muted.
Oh, thank you.
Please
proceed, Councilmember.
Again, thanks for the presentation. One thing I did hear you mention, and when we talked, you mentioned you weren't asking for, free venue to do this event in. But I see in your program and your proposal here, you're asking for some type of a discount on the facility. I guess that would be our part of sponsorship or whatever have you. I would just suggest, if it's something that the body's interested in, a city manager, if there's interest, maybe get Mrs. Johnson with Giannis and even look at see what if that date is available that you're looking for, even if that date's not already booked, and take it on from there. And I guess you all would have to flush out some details in terms of partnerships, and you're going to get together all of these sponsors and put together this pretty large event here. This looks like quite an undertaking. I know the city's got its hands full. We have several events that we are working on ourselves, throughout the year here. But if this is something that you feel like you can put together, I'm open to taking a look at it after you sit down with the city manager and the GICC, again, if there's interest, and you all take it from there and bring it back to us with something more concrete and comprehensive and solid, if it's something that we're interested in entertaining. So that's all I got.
Well, I certainly hope that you are, given the fact that we don't have a hospital south of I-20 and we are losing.
Has she dropped off? I don't see Mr. Huff, and I think they were together. I don't see him anymore. Mr. Hammond?
No, I don't see them either.
Okay. I think they've dropped off. Let's go on to number 3. So I know we've Ms. Johnson, is your audio working?
I've gone to my phone. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, James, I need Sarah Della on. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Coming to y'all to give you an update on the historical markers. We approved back August 21st, back in 2023. So it's been a little bit of a long road to get where we are, but we wanted to present to you just an overview of where we are and consideration of where we're looking to put the temporary markers. Sarah, are you on?
I am on. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, great. This is Sarah Della. She's with Georgia State. She's been helping us with the historical markers with all the research. And I'll give her the floor to give the update on everything and walk y'all through.
Sure. Thank you for having us here. We're excited to give you an update of this project. We're at about the halfway point. I do want to quickly, because I know one of them has a time commitment in about 5 minutes and has to drop off, but we are joined by our 2 graduate research assistants who have been taking the lead on this research and working with FOA to flesh out the markers. That's Bria and Halanza. And so I think Bria has the time commitment. So I'd love to, if they are on the line, pass it to them to just introduce themselves very briefly and quickly so you all can put faces and names to this project, and then we'll pivot back and I'll give you the quick update.
Yes, hello, I'm Bria. I am a former journalist. I live in the Tri-Cities area, actually East Point, and I am in my last semester in Georgia State's Heritage Preservation program studying public history. And since working on this project, I really enjoyed meeting the community members, but also learning about a community. I'm somebody who walks in that park, at the track all the time, learning about a community that no longer exists but held so much value for people that are still here and for the area and things like that. So I really have loved researching on this project and writing, and I'm looking forward to continuing it for the rest of this semester.
And then I think we have Halansa on.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Halansa Soor, and I'm a master's in heritage preservation student at Georgia State also, and I'm studying historic preservation. And doing this type of research on communities that have faced displacement is really dear to me. So I've been really excited to do that and also kind of delve into the kind of investigative aspect that comes with archival research. And that's not something that I'm as used to doing. So I've really enjoyed that. And thank you all for having me.
And James, I'm not sure if Gloria and Linda Hytera, Gloria Abdullah are on, if you can let them in, just if they have any comments. But I'll let Sarah just turn it over to do the presentation real quick and update.
I'll give the quick update, and then we'd love to have Gloria and Miss Linda give anything from FOA. But I will quickly just on this intro slide give you all just a recap because it's been a while since we've been in front of you. But this past fall, we started this project with Bria and Halansa starting off their fall semester. We are working on 10 sites that FOA identified to develop historical markers, develop the narrative, the language that will be on the markers, as well as kind of unearth any visuals around from different community archives, different institutional archives, newspapers, that kind of thing, or things that community members have that can add visual and illustration to those markers. So think of the kind of wayside signs at a national park that you're visiting, those kinds of things. The students have spent the fall doing a lot of research and visiting archives. They are now moving into a phase where they're taking the drafts that they made of those stories for each of the 10 sites, and they're going to revise and refine and collect more detailed research to get those to a finished product. So they'll be working with FOA more closely this semester to kind of to dig up anything missing from their research, to look at pictures needed, that kind of thing. So as part of that, our project plans included what we're calling kind of the temporary sign or the announcement sign to the community. And that's one of the main things we wanted to talk about today. This location is where in our early project planning, we had identified for this kind of temporary announcement sign. It's the depot, and we're talking about that wall there that's right under the porch roof. So we are proposing kind of a two-part sign to introduce the project to the community more broadly. It'll both talk about, at a high level, talk about the story of 1 square mile and the original African-American community that lived in that neighborhood. And it will identify the 10 sites that are part of this project. That's kind of the larger of the two signs. So it's a little bit of a map and a list of those 10 sites. The sign to the right is a bit of a call to action. So we recognize that there might be other people in the community who are less engaged, or children of elders and that kind of thing who haven't maybe thought of this, or just other folks who might have something. So this is a bit of a call for if you had family members who lived in this community, if you went to one of these schools, if you owned a business in this area, your family did, your grandparents, that kind of thing. give us an email, so submit things or ask us, and we could come help scan your pictures or that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a call to action, but this is also a way that we wanted to work with the city to shout from the rooftops a little bit that FOA and the city of College Park are doing this, are elevating the history of this community in College Park. So today we would love to get your input and approval on this temporary signage, but also make sure you're up to date on kind of where we are in the larger project. So the signage will look very much like this. We are still probably changing out a couple of those images on the bottoms to just get better ones or better resolution, but they will be kind of one-to-one in that spot and about the different sites. And both of these two signs will be printed together on a substrate that is pretty weatherproof. It's not one that can last forever and ever, but this is something, we intend to only be up kind of in a year span or that kind of, and it'll be certainly fine for that amount of time under the roof cover at that site. So this is what the larger sign would look like with the 10 sites itemized. And then we can go to the next slide. This is that supplemental sign, and this one puts out the call to action for contributing any family stories, anything you might know, flagging us to say, hey, I've got some photos or an old photo album or that kind of thing. It directs to an email address that's specific to the project, and that QR code goes to a form to that email address as well. So both of these, we can go to the next sign, are planned with a fabricator locally who prints and produces and delivers them and would mount them. They have a plan to mount them since that is a brick wall on what they call kind of a cleat, which does mean we would have to drill into the mortar portion, not the brick, but in just a couple minimal spots, and then they're security bracketed on, so they can't just be kind of lifted off and walk away. And this is the cost for that. It's within the original scope of our budget for this temporary announcement sign, I think a little bit under. And it's something we could kind of push go on at any point, and the fabricator would handle the entire thing from getting our files to installing it. We are interested in working with FOA and the city to figure out a kind of communications announcement for this as well. And I think that is the last. I think there's one other slide, Michelle, before we move to. So next steps, we would love to move forward on this temporary signage, get you all's approval for the signage itself, the location, the cost, and the installation, but also input on kind of the announcement process. We will then be progressing on the project back in our own corner with Bria and Felicia and Halanza doing their research and working with FOA. And then we also wanted to elevate that we hope this is just step one, and FOA and Michelle have all been interested in kind of teeing up a second year of this project so we could have a collective 20 total sites and signs. And as a reminder, by the end of this year, we will complete those kind of print-ready files for the signs, but we would not have anything fabricated or installed, as we would want to have the city be in more of a ready position with knowing what development is going to happen in that area, so that they can be produced in a way that's right for what happens there building wise and development wise.
So was there a next slide? I think there was one last slide, wasn't there?
I think that's the
yes.
Yeah.
So phase one, I'm sorry, Sarah, but phase one, been covered. The cost for the temporary sign is covered. We're just looking at that temporary location to be at the depot. So that's kind of what we wanted to get was approval this evening of that being located there. And then the proposed looking at, there was 2 phases to this, phase 1 and phase 2. And like I said, Sarah said, FOA is looking at the next 10 signs, and Sarah has given a proposed cost for that phase 2 of $13,500 to do the same thing and look at 10 more markers that FOA is looking at. I'm not sure if Gloria and Linda are on. I know they probably wanted to just wrap up and we can move on for any questions.
I don't see them as panelists. Mr. Hammond, do you see them? Okay.
Okay, and if possible.
Wait, no, Miss Gloria is via phone. Give me 1 second. Miss Abdullah?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we sure can.
Hi, how's everybody this evening?
Doing great.
Great. Okay, I just want to say, Michelle and Sarah, thank you all and the students for the work that you're doing on this project. We're really looking forward to continue work with you all. This is very important work, very important needed work. And whatever FOA can do to keep this thing moving forward, we're here for it. That's the mayor Mayor Pro Tem, council people. Do y'all have a question for me?
Ms. Abdullah, I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Is FOA good with the temporary signage? Any issues there?
Yes, we're good with the temporary signage at the depot. However, we understand it's temporary and that permanent signage will be coming forth once the community sits west is intact. But for now, yes, we're good with the temporary signage at the depot.
Perfect. Thank you.
Miss Gloria, I don't have any.
Hold on. I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Abdullah, for all of your advocacy and everything that FOA has done to bring all of this to the forefront for not only the elected officials, but the entire community. And so just thank you for your continuing efforts. Appreciate it.
And thank you all. Thank you all so much. It's such an important endeavor, and we really appreciate where this is going.
Gloria, okay. I don't have any questions. This is Mayor Pro Tem McKenzie. I don't have any questions, but you know, this project, everyone, is so dear to my heart. I feel like I'm a part of this community. I drive by the one square mile every day. And I used to drive by wondering what was there. And so once it came to my understanding, in fact, in Black History Month of 2023, ever since then I've just been really excited about this project. And Sarah, we actually, in my budget, in my community enhancement priorities budget for this year, I put $100,000 into the restoration of the depot right there, that building where you're going to put that sign. And one of the things that we want to do in the depot is we want to turn it into a welcome center here at the city, but we also want to make it a gallery. And the first gallery project that I'd like to see in there are some of these pictures that we've been collecting. So I've been working, I'm saying but I'm working with the FOA group and several of our neighbors, because this is the desire to really get this to the forefront. It's a travesty that this had to happen to this community at the very time where there was a portion of the city being designated as a historical district. The African-American families that were displaced when their homes and their businesses were completely left out. And so I truly believe that this is something that we need to do, because if we don't cause ourselves and be intentional about remembering, we will forget. And it's so important to be able to have families, you know, we've got lots of different pieces of property in the city that are no longer what they originally were. But it's nice to have these markers. And I think that this is a move in the direction, even for folks that, because progress happens, things happen, but we don't want to forget what was originally there. So I'm looking forward to it. Totally in every way. I'm so happy to meet the graduate students that are involved because you've made this into a larger community project, but also with Georgia State, your involvement. So I'm tickled purple, pink, green, and gray all at the same time, excited. I think that's everything that I had, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do right there at the depot and throughout the 1 square mile and Price Barbershop. In fact, we were supposed to go to Price Barbershop today, but the cold weather got us. So, Gloria, thank you, and thank you for not giving up.
The answer. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we are driven by the ancestors to do the right things. So thank you all.
Thank you, Gloria.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Carn?
All right, Sister Gloria, you staying warm?
I'm trying, I got my feet in some heated booties right now. So
All right, that's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, again, this is part of our history, and we want to make sure we keep that legacy going. Sarah, is it right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
All right. I hope you've been consulting or following along with Mayor Pro Tem McKenzie regarding this project. As you know, most of these markers sit in Ward 2 and Ward 1. So they're very important and to the entire body. It goes without saying. Um, so the money is still the same. I see 10 signs. And last year we approved that in 23, we approved that for 10 signs at $12,500. We're adding another 1,000 or so, and that total is going to be about 13 and a half. Is that still right?
That's
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Sarah. I'm sorry.
No, was that the right number?
That's the next year's proposal. Yes.
Okay, but that's the total money that we're looking at for this, right?
Yes, and keeping the amount that we would still spend for the current project, finishing the current project this year. So
Okay. Well,
correct.
that sounds like a
This is
shaky answer. Is there a total amount here? I just want to make sure, is it 13 and a half or is it another number?
It is 12.5 finishing out the current project, some of which has already, Michelle, is this, am I correct?
Councilman Carn, the 12.5 has already been distributed. It was already budgeted and taken care of. This is a proposal for budget 2 for the next 10 signs. So I don't think Sarah knew that. So yes, Georgia State handled all that portion, but yes, project
Okay, so all right.
for the temporary sign is included in it with that cost that we paid for the 12.5 for phase 1. It's all taken care of. We're looking at the 13.5 for the proposal for phase 2, which is what we'd be asking for approval this evening.
Thank you, Michelle.
This is the 12 and a half plus 13.
No, sir. The 12.5 has been already taken care of. We're just looking at that 13.5 for phase 2.
That was an old allocation. So the 13.5 is 1,000 more than the past project, if I can clarify that. And that is mostly because we had a little increase in our GRA stipend since the old project was a couple years ago rate.
Okay, so we're adding another $1,000 to the 12.5 that we already paid.
Correct.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to make sure I had an understanding there. Now, these are 10 additional signs in addition to a first 10? Is that what I heard? Or is this the original 10?
There's 10 additional signs we'd be researching to do for when we do the signage down the road when 6 West is done, that we would put signage out for them.
Gotcha. Understood. I see the 10 preliminary one. These are the planned historical markers. I see the 10 on the list. So there's another 10 on another list that's not here. Is that what I'm
Correct. We're working with FOA and also wanted to hear any input on, mayor and council if there was some, but FOA working with Linda and both Gloria to help with that, comprising that. They meet with us on those.
All right.
And they're also
okay. So the 10 in our packet, is that the original 10 or this is the new proposed 10?
That's the original 10. The new
Okay,
proposal
got it,
10 is
got it,
in the
got it.
works.
Okay, so we're gonna start on those first.
Correct. We're putting the temporary signage up for those first 10. And then
Okay.
they'll preliminary markers for when 6 West is done for the original 10 to go out. And then
Okay.
now until research 10 more for whether we want to do another
Got it.
sign, and then when
Okay.
6 West have those 10 signs ready to go.
Okay, I do understand. And the first 10 look good. And I see you got some of the major places there. But you are missing one that's very, very important for the original first 10. And I see you got Beavers and you got Sophia Elementary. But what we want to add in the first round, the now round, not the future round, in addition to this 10, and this is just my suggestion, we need to add an 11th for the first round, and that's going to be the Eva L. Thomas School. Adding this marker to the first round is crucial to this city's resolution to the Fulton County School Board for the renaming of College Park Elementary. So it's very important that that be added to this round because we're going to be heading up to the school board petitioning them for the name change. Having that historical marker in place in this first round is important. So if nobody objects, I would suggest we add an 11th for this round and not wait until the next round because we're taking action in the next month or two for the renaming. And it's important to have this marker earmarked and on the list, the current list, not the future list. Does that make sense? So that's what I'd like to see. That's the only addition I'd like to add. And if that means adding another $1,000, I say so be it. But we need that as part of our packet for the things we got to do in terms of preserving our history around here.
Yeah, I know Ms. Abdullah and Ms. Hightower, that was the next round did have that on their list. But we're deferring to them. So as far as adding, I'd have to, I mean, we
Right. Well, Michelle, you're deferring to us as well as for. And what I would like to do is add that additional marker to this round for a specific purpose to bolster our petition for the renaming of the school, which is going to happen in the next month or two. So I want to add one more marker to this round for the reasons why I mentioned. That's why it's important to add it here. I'm sure it would go in the next round, but I think we need it for this round.
May I ask to build on Councilmember Carn's point? The initial 10 signs, we're not placing them anywhere right now, correct?
So just the temporary marker. I
apologize for interrupting. So, Councilmember, does it make sense since those signs are not being placed at this time, to add Eva Thomas as an 11th marker to the temporary sign, but use it? We're planning for an additional 10 signs. None of them are being placed right now, but we put Eva Thomas as the 11th on the temporary sign that goes to the depot.
It does make a huge difference. And we absolutely need Eva L. Thomas on this roster and this set of 10 for the temporary markers right now for the first round. And I think it's very important. I think it's very important that we have that 11th marker now in the batch of the 10, adding one more marker again so that we let Fulton County Schools know that this is the first round and the first priority. Then we got 10 more coming, but this one pertains to Fulton County Schools and the business we have to handle with our school board.
I guess I'm confused about. I understand the significance, and I agree with you about acknowledging Eva Thomas. And if we put it on the temporary sign, I mean, making an 11th sign that is not going to be placed anywhere, like we're not placing them because of we don't know what's happening with certain areas of 6 West thus far. So the only thing the public would see at this point is this temporary signage. So
And that's very important.
Putting it on the, right, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Adding it as an 11th place, if we could go back on the slide to the proposed site on the depot. Could we go backwards on the slides?
Queenie, can you?
It's just a couple back, I think. If I can jump in, I think that this is an easy addition for us to kind of, with this temporary sign being what we're having serve as an announcement of the project. It seems like just adding the pinpoint on there to say Eva Thomas, and this highlights how important this one is for us in this announcement of the project. And then if in the cadence of research, that research gets done in year 2 with the students, that seems okay, because we're not creating those signs and putting them out like,
Well, and Sarah, I agree with you. This seems simple as a simple addition for the temporary marker to place things here. But Sister Gloria, if you're still there, you know, we talked about this before, Sister Gloria, with FOA and the support we have. But anytime that this city pushes for our history, anytime this city pushes for our diversity, someone is trying to slow that down, hold it up, and not put it on the front burner. We're not going to be slowed down anymore with our history. We're going to put this not on the back burner. This is going on the front burner. This temporary sign is crucial to making sure our legacy is cemented intergovernmentally, and we're not going to be slowed down again. Anytime something comes up with diversity, and particularly our African American diversity, it is slowed down. Now, it's not slowed down by Mayor Pro Tem McKenzie. It's not slowed down by Councilwoman Tracy Arnold. Our diversity and inclusion is not slowed down by Councilmember Roderick Gay. And it darn sure is not slowed down by Joe Karn. So I'll just leave it at that. But we are not going to be slowed down. We want to include Eva L. Thomas, the school. We want to include the history in the permanent markers, in the temporary markers, in the application process, and everything in between. We are not going to be slowed down every time something comes up that involves diversity and African American heritage and history in this city. And I'll just leave it at that.
Councilmember, and I noted that you did not include me in the list of people who is not slowing things down. Understand, please, that I do not appreciate that level of a personal attack in a professional meeting, because that is not my intent. What I am trying to say is, if we can go back a couple of slides, please. Ms. Brown. That we add, nope, I'm sorry, go on, nope. You were on it.
That one.
Yes, that we add an 11th part. That we add number 11. That we add Eva L. Thomas to this temporary marker. That's all I'm saying. Because we don't have placement for the 10 permanent markers. We're getting 10 more. I don't understand why this has to be personal and there has to be attacks on race when I am clearly a Black woman. I want to celebrate this as much as anyone else. And frankly, it's a distraction to sit and point and try to divide us on these particular issues, because we're all supportive of the efforts of FOA and trying to bring this awareness to our community. I'd ask that you stop, because it's not productive. We're all here trying to get things done. I'm still talking, sir. And so I would say add it here because we don't have spots for the permanent signs right now. And if we make it the 11th sign, Sarah, I'm sorry, Ms. Are you a doctorate or are you a doctor or are you?
Just Sarah. That's fine.
I tend not to refer to people to their first names in a professional setting. So how do I pronounce your last name?
Dilla.
Ms. Dilla.
Ms. Dilla is fine.
All right. The permanent signs, we have funding for 10, correct?
Correct.
And you're here asking funding for an additional 10.
Correct.
Will all 20 be put out at the same time? Is that the anticipation?
That is future budget dependent. But they will, by the completion of the end of this year's project, which has already been paid for as I now got up to speed on the finances, and the completion of next year's proposed project, we would leave the city and FOA with 20 kind of print ready files that could be fabricated when the locations become into more clarity.
I see. So the idea is that when we're ready to place, we will have all 20.
They're ready to go. Yeah.
All right. So nothing's getting printed right now other than the temporary sign.
Other than the temporary sign, and then what we have built into this proposed budget for next year is a little bit more of an elaborate temporary sign. This one is pretty bare bones because we wanted to announce the project and we wanted to do this kind of call to action. We're proposing that next year, since we'll have these 10 stories under our belt in kind of the formalized narratives of the signs, and we'll be working on 10 more. We propose that the temporary sign be exchanged out, or maybe it's in a new location. Perhaps it's part of something in this gallery, who knows? But it can be a little bit more elaborate, and that line is a little bit different in the budget because of that, because we'll have more stories to pull from and tease out in that next iteration of a temporary sign.
I agree with Councilmember Carn that that Eva L. Thomas should be part of this, the first round of temporary signs. Absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. And so, and whether it's the temporary sign or the less temporary sign. Miss Abdullah, though.
Hi.
You raised your hand.
Yes, I did. Okay. Eva Thomas, I agree, should be a part of this temporary signage at the depot. Understanding that before a permanent marker can be placed, as Councilman Carn said, the Board of Education has to be approached about renaming the school. And that would coincide with a permanent marker. But for the time being, I agree that the Eva Thomas marker, temporary marker, should be added to this group of markers. When we were thinking about this, we were going to add the permanent marker with with Eva Thomas being a permanent marker at the time, because we knew there was a process of addressing the Board of Education. But now, since things has transpired the way they have, I agree there's somewhat of an urgency to continue to get the word out about Eva Thomas, and it can be done through this temporary marker.
Thank you.
And we want to make sure that Eva Thomas is locked in to the first round of temporary markers, that we have them permanently marked for our history. So again, this is the direction we want to move in. We don't want to delay, and we can't afford to wait until the next round. That was my point. That's what I suggested. That's what I recommended. And we all heard the conversation in terms of who thought that was not such a good idea and waiting until the second round. But I think there's a consensus now. And thank you, Mayor. we're going to unite together and we're going to do this together as a consensus and move this stuff forward as quickly as possible. So I think we're all on the same page now.
I have a quick commercial. I know we're running out of time. The Fulton County Teachers Museum, which is located in Hateville, they're having a special screening of the documentary on Eva Thomas High School. And that's going to be held on January 30th at 5:30, well, actually between 5:30 and 6. Just want to invite the community, if you have not seen this documentary on Eva Thomas School, and you can get over to Hateville. I know it's also available online, but they'll be doing a special screening. It's a great story and just something that I think would really also help people to understand the urgency and why it's so important that we move forward in this direction.
Thank you, Councilmember Arnold.
That's a tricky little button. Thank you. This is just wonderful work, and I want to thank everybody that's involved. Gloria, you're doing an amazing job in making sure that that we don't forget. And I am proud of the work that's coming out of Georgia State with you, Sarah, and with your graduate students. And hopefully we are also sharing a message throughout the community and to our younger generations of how important it is to make sure that we don't forget our history. So especially now at this time of the year. So I thank you, and I'm really excited about this project, and really excited about, even though it's a temporary marker, I'm still excited that it's going up and it's letting the community know about the good work that we're doing here in College Park. Thank you.
Councilmember Gay. Sir, you're muted.
I want to take a step back. It goes without saying that I absolutely support my colleagues and the great work that the community group is doing. But I want to take this quick minute to acknowledge former council member Ambrose Clay, because before this council was seated, he gave the vote along with myself to name the main entrance into that community for Lolly Miller. And not to make light of Eva Thomas in the school, I just want to make sure that we know that there are other people in the community who have been and continue to be stakeholders. I also want to say that the Coming Home reunion that comes to our city every year by members of Thor, I think that's something called Party with a Purpose, Do for Self. That is an opportunity for Thor and the other advocates to grow their advocacy. You obviously have the support of your council and your mayor, but someone who is fourth generation College Park, fifth actually, I say it with authority I don't see that opportunity being seized at the Coming Home celebrations, and that should be where Thor should also focus some of its efforts. So congratulations to everybody for what you're doing. The final thing I want to say is that when they developed the Lolly Miller Boulevard, there's a turnaround there, which could be an opportunity to build some type of statue that could be a possible placeholder for your permanent markers. I thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you, sir. All right. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. We will keep on moving forward. Councilmember Arnold.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So this is just, I put this item on the agenda, on the workshop agenda for us to discuss as a governing body. I believe everybody remembers when we talked about the budget last year. We specifically talked about the stipends. I think it came up when we were talking about the BIDA stipends. And at that time, we talked about the stipends or those particular boards and committees that were not getting a stipend. And Keep College Park Beautiful was one of those. And so I wanted to have a discussion about us making sure that we solidify these stipends. I think when we approved the budget, it was I was under the assumption that we were moving forward with the amount that was documented. I believe that it's 150. However, it's to my understanding that the members of Keep College Park Beautiful have not been receiving their stipends since we voted last year. And so I would like for this body to consider and to support us keeping our word as far as giving those volunteers the stipend. I think there is a typo though. It should be from July because we voted in June and our budget cycle doesn't start until July 1st. And so I would just be looking for us to solidify those stipends from July 1st up until February 1st for our appointees on the Keep College Park Beautiful board. And I'd like to just open it up for discussion for anyone who wants to give any feedback.
And if you would just follow Councilmember Carn's lead and raise your hand if you do have feedback. And Councilmember Carn?
Councilwoman Honor, I do agree. I think everyone deserves a stipend. So I agree with that 100%. I also wanted to mention in our regular session, we're going to be discussing the Alcohol License Review Board. City manager, we also want to make sure that they get a stipend as well, including in that language for the resolution for the Alcohol License Review Board. Now, they won't be meeting anywhere close to once a month. It's going to be a rare occasion when an issue comes up. So, but when they do have meetings, we want to make sure they're covered with the same equity as the other volunteer boards. So,
Okay, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to say thank you to Councilwoman Tracy Arnold because again, when we voted back during the budget, I was under the impression that every single board member in the city would receive a stipend. So I'm also interested to know, I know we're hearing from the College Park, Keep College Park Beautiful, but I'm hoping that all of our board members that they're not the only ones that didn't receive. So I just want to say thank you, Councilwoman Arnold, for being diligent and bringing this to our attention. The way the stipends, to my understanding, the way the stipends are paid out is that they get a check at the end of the year. So what I would just make an adjustment is to say that let's pay them the Keep College Park Beautiful from July to December, and then at the end of this year they'll receive their $150. And people may be listening and say, oh, $150, that's just too much to pay. These are persons, the people that serve on our boards are not just citizens in this city, but they give of their time, they give of their talent. And many of them, it's not just about that once a month meeting. I mean, I know when I was on BIDA, we had different events that we went to. We weren't getting paid for those events, but we were, ribbon cuttings and especially Keep College Park Beautiful. They are doing all of these projects throughout the city. So to me, it's this is just a little token of appreciation saying thank you. And times have changed. A loaf of bread that might have been $2 or $3 a few couple of years ago is now $6 and $7. If you're buying the bread I buy, it can be up to $9 a loaf. So we have to take those types of things into consideration. So I appreciate you, Councilwoman, and thank you again for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
Any further comments? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the House Bill 581 presentation. Mr.
Good
Wall,
evening,
are you
Mayor.
there? Oh, there we
Yes,
go.
ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I have a presentation. Can I share the screen, Mrs. Brown?
Yes, Ed, anything for you.
Oh, you're the best. You have to unlock my screen some kind of way.
Give me 1 second.
Yes, ma'am.
You should be able to share your screen because you are a panelist.
All right, let me see. Yes, ma'am. There it is. Can you see it, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Great. So, Mayor and Council, good evening. House Bill 581 was passed by the Georgia legislature last year in the 24th session, and there was a constitutional amendment voted on it in November. And when it was in the legislature, there were 4 separate bills. And on the last week of the session, these 4 bills got squeezed into one bill in a conference room. And I think it might have been some unintended consequences by squeezing 4 separate bills into one bill. And GMA, ACCG, and the Georgia School Boards Association started about July trying to figure out what it actually did. And I had talked to all of them, and I encouraged the 3 of them to come together in all 3 organizations, which represented 535 cities, 159 counties, and 180 school boards, come together and agree on what it does. And on October the 3rd, GMA and ACCG did a joint slide presentation to say what it did. I have read the bill. It's 27 pages, I don't know, a dozen times for all my clients across the state. And even today, I have like 180 clients all across the state. I bet there's 100 different opinions about what it does even today. Tax assessors and tax commissioners had a conference on January the 13th in Macon just for all of them to try to get on the same page. House Bill 581 does 3 things, and I have it listed here in the memo. 1, it establishes a new floating homestead exemption for property taxes tied to inflation. Number 2, it creates a new floating local option sales tax. All of us are familiar with the LOST because every 10 years, all the cities in Fulton County have to renegotiate how that LOST is distributed amongst us. This is a new FLOST that works just like the LOST. It's to reduce property taxes. So if you have a floating homestead exemption, you can get a FLOST. And then 3, it's supposed to simplify how you set taxes. Y'all remember each year when we set the taxes, you're required to calculate a rollback rate. And then you have to have 3 public hearings if you want to charge a millage rate higher than that rollback. This bill 581 is supposed to simplify that process. I should have put simplifies in quotation marks because it does not do that. One of the things I want to highlight in this next to the next paragraph, 581 was a constitutional amendment because it created this new floating local option sales tax, and it had to raise the cap in communities from 8% to 9%. And so it passed in November. 3,087,000 votes voted yes, and 1,818,000 voted no. So it had a 63% approval rate. Local governments have until March the 1st to decide if they want to opt out of 581. You're automatically opted in. You have to actually take action to opt out if you want to. One thing about 581, once you're opted in, you can never get out. If you opt out, you can never get back in. How does homestead exemption work, this new homestead exemption? So I want to give you an example. We'll go to the second paragraph. This new homestead exemption is tied to inflation. So every year, you know, those of us who own a house, we get a tax assessment notice from the tax assessor each year. And some years they raise the value of the house. Under Georgia laws and Constitution, the tax assessor is supposed to assess all property, businesses, commercial, industrial, and residential at 100% of fair market value. And the state does this sales ratio study every 3 years. They check the tax assessor, And they say, here's a sampling of properties that sold in your county in the previous 3 years, and here's what you had it assessed for. And if his assessment, which is supposed to be 40%, he gets to have a 36% to 44% leeway if his sales ratio study is outside of that 36-44 and it's supposed to be 40. They make them have a reevaluation, and you lose state grants if you don't stay within that 36 to 44 range. And so this House Bill 581 says that a tax assessment each year on homestead property can only go up by the value of inflation. And anything over that is going to be added to a homestead exemption. And so it's a policy of the Georgia legislature, I think, to shift the burden of paying for local government away from homestead residential to other classes like business and industrial and public utilities and apartments and people who rent out houses. So a homestead means you have to live there. It is your primary residence, and you go and apply for a homestead exemption. So if you are a homestead owner of a residential property, you are available for this House Bill 581. So let's give an example. Second paragraph here. If a house is valued at $250,000 and it's valued at 40%, that house for tax purposes is going to be $100,000. There we are right there, $100,000. Under 581, that's going to be the base year in 2024. So the base year is at $100,000 on a $250,000 house. And then if in 2025, the taxer says that that house goes up by 10%, so you got $250,000 times 10% is now going to be worth $275,000. That number times 40% says that you, the school board, and the county get to tax it at $110,000. But if 581 is in effect and y'all stayed opted in, that individual house, which has a homestead exemption, is only going to go up 3% because that's pretty much what the inflation rate was for all of 2024. We don't know what it's going to be in 25, but the value of inflation is about 3%. So $250,000 times 3% is only an increase of $7,500. And so that results in a new market value of $250,000 plus $7,500. So now it's worth $257,500 under 581. And so up here, remember, it was worth $275,000. So the difference between 275 and 257 is what that new homestead exemption is going to be. And so this 110,000 is 40% of 275,000. This new 257,500 at 40% is 103,000. So 103,000 minus 110,000 says that that homeowner now gets an extra $7,000 as a homestead exemption. And it would go up every year if the assessor raises the assessment greater than inflation. And that property owner continues to get a bigger and bigger homestead exemption until they sell that property. When that property is sold, it's all wiped out and starts over again. And so it's a way for a homestead property for its value not to go up anything greater than what inflation is. If you have a floating homestead exemption, you qualify for a FLOST, unless you're one of 4 cities. And so I told you that the constitutional amendment raised the sales tax rate from 8% to 9%. But 4 cities are already at 9% because they have a most. And those 4 cities are Hapeville, East Point, Atlanta, and the city of College Park. So as it's drafted, all this is superfluous. You can't apply for it. You ain't in it. You couldn't get it if you wanted it. There is a move afoot this year in the legislature to change some parts of 581 that are complicated and people won't change. You all have a lobbying team on your payroll. I would encourage you to ask them to eliminate that most requirement so that you all could have a FLOST if you so chose. but you may not be able to get it anyhow. Under the 581, if any city in Fulton County, if any city in Clayton County, because you're both counties, or if the counties opt out, any one of you, all of you lose the floss. And so the legislature was making the floss the carrot to make everybody give the floating homestead exemption. And so they thought if they took that carrot away, it would make everybody want to stay in the floating homestead exemption. Nobody would opt out. But so many folks are opting out because if you have a millage rate cap, like a lot of the new cities, Johns Creek, Milton, Brookhaven, Dunwoody, City of South Fulton, or you're a school board with a 20 mil cap, if you lose revenue through this floating homestead exemption, if you don't have a millage rate cap, you can raise the millage rate to balance your budget. But if you have a millage rate cap and you're close to that cap, you can't afford to lose any revenue because you have a cap, you can't go over it. It's important to know that this floating homestead exemption takes away future revenue. It doesn't take anything you have in your pocket today. So it's something that would lower the growth in every year's tax digest. And so when you all College Park, since you don't have a cap, every year when you do your budget, whatever you budget that you need that year for property taxes, you simply divide it by that year's tax digest and you come up with your millage rate. You may have to jump through a lot of hoops like we always do about the rollback, but you have the option to charge whatever millage rate is necessary to fund your government. Cities with a millage rate cap and school boards don't have that option. So there are a lot of folks across the state that are opting out, school boards in particular, cities with a millage rate cap, and even some cities who think this 581 violates their home rule. There's a theory that the state, home rules embedded in the Georgia Constitution by the state telling you how you go about levying taxes and how you go about doing a homestead exemption is taking away local control. And so a lot of cities and counties, even with no millage rate cap, are voting to opt out. So many so that a powerful state senator from Rome, Senator Chuck Hufstetter, has said to the Rome Tribune that he intends to drop a bill in the legislature to do away with the ability to opt out. But he's not likely to get that passed by March 1, so you have a decision to make whether you're going to opt out or not. I'll go through all the floss. One last thing about the floss. A loss was approved in Fulton County, I think, in 1978. And every 10 years, you renegotiate the split between the cities and the county, but it never goes away if y'all agree on the split. But a floss doesn't work that way. It only has a 5-year levy. When if you and the county decide to call it, it's levied for just 5 years. If you wanted to renew it, you have to go to the legislature and ask them to pass a bill allowing you to renew it, and then you got to put it to the voters again. And the bad thing about that for me, I think, is if you got crossways with your local legislative delegation and they didn't give it to you, or if the voters didn't reapprove it on year 6, you're going to have a really big millage rate increase because whatever sales tax you had collected to roll back your millage rate, all that's gone. Floss is not any new revenue. It's just like loss. Loss is not new revenue. It rolls back property taxes dollar for dollar. And floss can be levied in 0.05 increments. The loss is just a full 1%. Splost is a full 1%. I think T-splosh could be a quarter, a half, 3/4, or $1. But floss could be a nickel. And so you and the county would negotiate, if it's an option, how much of that full 1% you would levy. Your current homestead exemptions in City College Park, everybody who qualifies for a homestead exemption, they own their house, they live in their house full time, they qualify and apply for a homestead exemption, they get $40,000 off of that 40% value. You have a new one that has been implemented in the last few years that 65 and older with income limits can get 100% of that 40% value wiped out. Phil told me today that you have about 1,200 homestead properties in the City College Park. Should the city opt out? The City College Park is located in 2 counties, Clayton and Fulton. Your 2024 gross tax digest from both counties was $1.577 billion. I'm right here. Residential property was 300 million. You're very fortunate. You know, South Fulton's residential property is a little over half. Stonecrest is 62%. You're in a good spot that so much of your tax digest is commercial and businesses. So it's 300 million or 19%. That's really low compared to a lot of governments I represent. If in 25, the tax assessor raised values of homestead property by 8%, you had $300 million in residential, but those 1,200 homes is worth about $87 million, near as I could tell. Phil didn't work today, and so he didn't confirm that number, but I got it off the state's website. I think it's right. So the tax assessor took that 87 million up by 8%, it'd be worth 94 million. But now if you're inside 581, you know, you don't get that 8%. You don't get to tax on that. You only get to tax on what's tied to inflation. So if inflation was 3%, then that 87 million becomes 90 million. And so the difference in that is $4 million that would go into a homestead exemption. That 4 million times your millage rate of 11.608 mills means you'd lose revenue that year of 46,500. And that number would just increase year over year. So it's not any big money today, but 10 years from now, it could be big money. And one thing you need to consider, you could, once you stay in, you can never, ever get back out. Any of these other homestead exemptions, if any of them become too costly, you can get out of them. You can have another vote, a referendum to get out of them. So here's my conclusion as your financial advisor. In my opinion, the cost to the city is not so great that it would be prohibitive, and the city does not have to opt out. Furthermore, it's an opportunity cost and not money out of the city's coffers right now. Lastly, there's no cap on the city's millage rate in its city charter like a school board has or some cities have, and the city has the option to raise its millage rate if it needs to. Other factors for you to consider when you're trying to decide whether to opt out or not is, one, does this state mandated homestead exemption interfere with the city's home rule powers under the Georgia Constitution? Once opted in, you're in, you can never get out. And number two, if the city opts out and the legislature changes the ability of the city with the most to participate in the FLOST, if the city opts out, it cannot participate in a future SPLOST ever. And so those are things to consider. One last thing I'll say, if you are thinking about opting out, or if you want to opt out, the state law 581 requires you to have 3 public hearings. Those hearings, just because you have them, doesn't mean that you're opting out. You're asking the public to come for a public comment, and you could hear from your citizens whether they want you to opt in or opt out. You have those 3 public hearings and then decide on the 3rd hearing date whether you want to opt in and opt out, or you could decide tonight. But if you want to opt out, you have to have those 3 public hearings regardless. Mayor, that's it.
Thank you, sir. And if any of the council has questions, if you just raise your hand. Councilmember Carn and then Councilmember Arnold.
All right. This is a very, very, very important decision that we have to make. Ed, you covered things pretty well from one perspective, but there is another perspective that we need to consider. I've talked to several of our legislators about this, and this was on the referendum for the November ballot. This is the ballot that brought in our historic elections of Mayor Pro Tem and Council Member Arnold. I was well aware of the language. I talked to Legislative Council about what the referendum meant, and I had recommended to all of my residents, as well as my Fulton County residents that I previously had, to vote no on all 3 ballot referendums. And here is the reason why. We have to look at what College Park is. In College Park, I know a lot of y'all have heard the story that it's a tale of 2 cities. One very wealthy population and segment of the city, and one very low income, poor segment of this city. And this is what this whole thing is about: the rich versus the poor. I'm going to say it again. This is about the rich versus the poor. Now, College Park itself, you all know our city's demographics. I don't have to tell you all that. The overwhelming majority of our residents and their children attend public schools. And that is an undeniable fact. We know that. Now, yes, we have Woodward Academy, and it is a wonderful school, the largest private school in the continental United States. We also have the Georgia Cyber Academy, over 14,000 students enrolled. This is a state accredited school located and headquartered in College Park. So we have the largest public school in Georgia as well. However, the vast majority of our kids, again, attend our public schools. And if you look at the rankings of our public schools compared to all of the Fulton County schools, obviously, we still have a long way to go in terms of our public schools. Now, most Georgians, or Americans for that matter, really don't understand the value of the ownership of their public schools. House Bill 581 in the previous referendum was constitutional for a reason. That means it's permanent for all intents and purposes. I think that this city needs to opt out. And Ed, you spoke to the issues in terms of home ownership. The non-participation rule with the floss is the carrot. It is the carrot, however, to start the dismantling of our public schools. Keep that in mind. Homeowners, and I think we're pretty much all homeowners here. I know throughout Fulton County, when I was commissioner, homeowners were very unhappy about paying those property taxes, most of which, the majority of our property taxes, goes towards the school systems. Without question, the overwhelming majority goes towards the school systems. And when I say the school system, the public school system. And Fulton County in College Park, we are majority rental. We're 75% rental. So we don't have a lot of home ownership. Now, the referendum was designed to sound very good. And I knew it was going to pass, unfortunately, even though I recommended no on all three. And they're designed to sound that way, where they're guaranteed to pass. The language is very well crafted. It's almost impossible for these things to fail. It was almost as if someone said, we got a referendum question. Do you like fresh air and sunshine? No one was going to say no. The majority of people would not say no. The question is coined and phrased in that way. But I believe that this could potentially be the beginning of the end of public education, and particularly for the poor. We know from Ed's presentation what this will do for our homeowners. It will give them savings. And a lot of them feel like they don't need to pay into public schools for the main reason of, well, I don't have kids in public schools. A lot of our homeowners in College Park are doing pretty well. And, a lot of them don't have their children in public schools anyhow. A lot of homeowners, after a certain level of income, they put their children in private school. That's their right, and it's understandable. But the kids who lose out big time are the public schools children, which is the majority of all of our children, y'all. And while you think that you're saving some tax money, keep something in mind. When you defund our public infrastructure, and that's what this bill is designed, it's going to do, like it or not, that's what it's going to do. And public schools is a part of our public infrastructure. So I would imagine the majority of our homeowners are going to say, yes, absolutely. I don't want to pay for these services that I don't use. Absolutely. I want to pay fewer property taxes. And if the public schools suffer, well, so be it, because I don't have anything to do with that. But here's the thing homeowners may not realize. We all do have something to do with public schools and the value of it. When you defund our public schools, or if you make a decision to, by not opting out, you just got to remember something. Yes, we saved a few dollars if you're a property owner, homeowner, but that ball just keeps on bouncing. And the students of those defunded schools and underfunded schools, keep in mind, you know, they may return to our nice neighborhoods, but those students without enough education in their world now, and with schools that are significantly degraded, they may end up as juveniles because of the lack of education. And again, that ball keeps on bouncing. And those juveniles are the ones who could wind up kicking in your back door because they're unemployable now due to the lack of decent public education. So I want us to look at both sides of this thing. There's another side to everything, and we need to be aware of it. Now, I think that this city needs to opt out. Now, if we want to lower property taxes, it doesn't interfere with our home rule option, and we can lower our millage rate if we so choose. But I just want to put that out there. And, there's another side to this. So if you're a homeowner and you're doing pretty well, you don't have your kids in public schools, and it sounds like a great deal. But if we're talking about what's best for this entire city, look at the demographics of our entire city. The majority of our city and their children are overwhelmingly depending on public schools, which are already struggling, our public schools. And this is a matter of fact, and it's undeniable. So keep that in mind. This will further lower and degrade this. We do this, our class sizes will increase because there will be less money for more teachers to cover things. So keep in mind, it's some savings on the front end. But at the end of the day, you got to think about where that leads and what that leads to. If you're interested in bringing down crime, if we're interested still in bringing down blight in this city, let's look at this thing and see how it plays out if we look at the savings on the front. Again, we can still save residents on the back end. We had the largest millage rate decrease in all of Fulton, DeKalb, or Clayton County. The largest, over 8.7% decrease in the millage rate. So we do pretty good and hold our own pretty well. But we got to think about everybody here. And I know how it goes, your homeowners vote, and I know how that is. But we got to look out for the welfare of this entire city. So I'll leave it at that. So let's think very carefully about what we're doing here and what the results will be.
Mr. Wall, I want to ask a question in regard to Councilmember Carn's comments, because I want to make sure that we're clear about what we're deciding on versus what the Fulton County School Board makes a decision on. Because it was my understanding that the decision of the city of College Park is in relation to its portion of the taxes, that the school board, whether they opt in or opt out, is not dependent on the floss. And I know that the floss is something that we are not eligible for because we have the most, but it is dependent upon the cities and the county and not the school board. The school board makes an independent decision as to whether or not they opt in or opt out. We're only talking about our portion of the taxes that are generated. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Councilmember Arnold?
So my question is in reference to the eligibility. If we're not eligible for the floss, then why are we having a conversation? Like if we have most and most makes us ineligible, then why do we have to make a choice whether we opt in or opt out anyway?
So there are three things that the bill did, the floating homestead exemption, the floss is supposed to simplify how you go about levying your regular property tax. So the floss and the floating homestead exemption are two separate things. And so even though you can't participate in the floss, you still got to decide whether you stay in the floating homestead exemption or opt out. So you're automatically out of floss because of most, but you are not automatically out of the floating homestead exemption.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, just to clarify, just listening to what everybody's saying here, if we opt in, or if we stay, right now, we're pretty much opted in unless we opt out. If we stay opted in, this is not going to affect the money coming, the tax money. What Councilman Carnes' concern was that our schools, and that there be money that the taxes would be going to education. So this is not affecting education, correct?
Correct. Your decision alone affects just you. I think what he was saying was that he thinks the bill itself is hurting education. And if he was on the school board, he would definitely opt out. And you know what I'm saying? He was just speaking philosophically about what he thought about the bill in general, but your decision only affects you.
Okay. So, and then Councilman Arnold, actually, the question that came to mind, she asked that already. My thought would be, and I know it was going to come back up in our meeting probably this evening, is that we still go ahead with the public hearing so that we can I wouldn't want to make a decision on this tonight, either through the public hearings or allowing another meeting so we could have public comment on this, because this is an issue. Yes, we are homeowners, but there's several more homeowners. So I'd like to definitely give the opportunity so I guess we would move in the direction of opting out at this point, and then allow the feedback that we get from those, hopefully as much as those 1,200 homeowners, and then we'll make a collective decision. So that would be my thought, and then we could all kind of get some feedback.
So, Madam Pro Tem, it's my advice to you, if it is the consensus that one or more of you is considering opting out, you should direct Winston and staff to prepare the public hearings. They have to do an ad in the local newspaper declaring your intent to opt out, and then why you're doing it. And then they have the public hearings. And then on the third hearing, you can decide to stay in if you want. But if you don't do those public hearings and the ad in the paper, you can never opt out. And it has to be done by March 1. So tonight's decision, I think, if there's a consensus, just like you say, I'm just paraphrasing it, is to direct staff to go on and do the ad and advertise the 3 hearings.
Councilmember Gay, did you want to add any thoughts? And you're muted, sir, so I don't. Councilmember Gay, are you good?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I'm to the opinion that definitely something where the public need to weigh in on. But I wasn't quite clear. Did he say that what part of it affects most, Ed?
So if you have a most, you can't participate in the FLOST. So it just singles out the 4 cities that have the most.
I mean, we fought hard for that most. I think it took us almost 6-7 years to get it. And I think we're getting millions of dollars for our sewer. So that would be one of my concerns. My second concern would be, I'm hoping and praying that the legislators and the governor give us a homestead exemption for our seniors. So most of my ward, my homeowners are seniors. So I just don't think this bill has a direct impact on my constituents as much as some of the others.
All right. So that wraps up our workshop session. We are running a little bit over, but quite a bit over, actually, about 40 minutes. And so let me give everybody a 10-minute break. Let's resume at 8:20, and we will start with our regular session. We'll see everybody in a little bit.
Okay, department heads, I need you all to stay back. I need all the